Buenas noches a todos y todas.
Good evening to everyone.
Como siempre, tenemos periódicamente esta inversión en el liderazgo.
As always, throughout the year, we are very intentional about connecting with all volunteers whom we consider all to be leaders. All volunteers are leaders.
Nuestro compromiso es tratar de invertir a la medida que podamos
And our commitment is to continue to invest at the measure that we can
para ayudarles a desarrollar su liderazgo y su servicio.
because we believe when pastors continuously connect with the volunteerism, you can develop your leadership and your skills and your craft and together make a better church.
Les acuerdo que todas nuestras inversiones anteriores están grabados y están en una página de YouTube para los que no participaron en las previas.
So for any one of you who are new to this group, may have missed any of the leadership investment, there are dozens of the 1.5 year that we trained, and that is in Pastors Salguero YouTube. Pastors Salguero YouTube, you can go there. All of the lessons are there in number order.
Y usted se puede suscribir a esa página también si usted desea.
You can also subscribe if you desire, but all of
Pero
them are
como
there.
quiera, todo eso es
Thank you,
es
Jadilis.
gratis.
And all of our trainings are free. Other churches use them, other leaders use them as well.
Es lo que se llama una fuente abierta, ¿no?
It is a hub, it is an open hub. Our leadership trainings are for everyone.
Oramos y después vamos a hablar
We pray and then we'll talk about
de un tema que quiero compartir con ustedes
a theme that I'd like to share with you all
sobre edificando la gente,
on building others, building people,
liderazgo y edificando la gente.
leadership and building others.
Y vamos a pasar unos minutos ahí. También creo que tenemos una encuesta o no.
We have a fun little interactive poll
Que podemos quizás tomar al final.
that
Or-
wherever you'd like,
or-
wherever pastor would
quizás-
like at the end, or maybe whatever you want.
Al inicio. Entonces vamos a orar. Señor, gracias
Lord, we give you thanks
por este grupo de hermanas y hermanos
for this group of brothers and
y
sisters
por el privilegio
and for the privilege
de servir tu obra,
of serving your work,
de servir tu gente,
of serving your people,
de ser parte de lo que tú estás haciendo.
of being a part of what you are doing.
Queremos ser útiles para tu obra
We want to be useful for your
y traer
kingdom
gloria a tu nombre.
and to give glory to your name.
Necesitamos tu instrucción,
We need your instruction,
necesitamos tu fortaleza,
your strength,
tu formación.
your formation.
Ayúdanos, Señor,
Help us, God,
en el nombre de Jesús,
in the name of Jesus
por obra del Espíritu
and through
Santo.
the work of the Holy Spirit.
Amén.
Amen.
Mire, en las previas inversiones o talleres,
In the previous workshops that we've had,
nosotros hablamos de cultura.
we've spoken about culture,
¿Por qué la cultura es sumamente importante?
why culture, and you all carry the culture, why culture is so important.
Y que el liderazgo no solo conozca la cultura,
And that the leadership not only knows the culture,
sino que encarne la cultura.
but incarnates, carries, are the carriers, the heralds of the
Y que también
culture,
sean los campeones y campeonas de la cultura.
and the champions of culture.
Y para eso también vamos a ver cuántos de ustedes
And for that, we'd also like to know how many
se
of you
acuerdan de algunas de las pláticas que hemos tenido
remember some of the titles that we've invested in you, that we've trained.
y tenemos unas
on.
encuestas que la pastora va a compartir con ustedes.
Oh, you want to do it now? Okay. So if you are able to,
Si puedes,
there is a poll.
hay una encuesta.
So
Eh,
we're going to
y-
launch the
Y
poll.
ahora hemos puesto la pregunta y usted puede responder.
And there are just 3 questions there.
Hay solo 3 preguntas allí.
And you pick the one that
Y
you
usted
think is correct.
Escoja cuál de las respuestas usted piensa que es correcto o la respuesta correcta y después vamos a
And then we're going to quickly go over it.
después vamos a pasar esto. Esto es un
So-
repaso de algunas de las ingredientes del ADN y de la
This
cultura.
is just a small little way to see if we're all capturing and all rowing in the same directions as to who the gathering is.
¿Pueden ver la encuesta?
Can you see it?
Haga así si la puede ver.
Yeah, okay, people are nodding.
Okay,
The first question is, the mission of the gathering is.
okay. El tiempo se está acabando, pero no veo que la gente. Okay, ahora
No,
es.
yeah, people are.
Okay.
So one person has responded. Oh,
Usted puede responder
you can respond, and then
Es-
we'll end the
y
poll
cuando terminemos con la respuesta,
at about minute 2.
vamos como 2 minutos para.
And there are a lot of people answering. Very good. So the first question
La primera pregunta,
is the mission of the
¿cuál es
gathering.
cuál es la misión del encuentro?
There are 3 options
3
there.
opciones.
And this may be a tricky one. I don't know. We'll see.
El segundo es nuestros valores céntricos
The
son.
second one is our core values are.
Y el tercero es
And
nuestro estilo de liderazgo
the third one is
incluye.
our leadership style involves. And then the fourth one, yeah, there's a question there. So a few
Sí.
more seconds.
Vemos que 6 personas han respuesto.
What's 4?
There is
No,
no
there
4.
is no 4.
Okay, because it's requiring it.
Well,
It's
just
okay.
answer it. It doesn't
Yep.
matter.
Just put
Okay.
choice. Yeah. Very good. Many people are responding. And this is good. This is a great indicator, right?
Muy bien,
All right,
tenemos
10 more seconds.
de 10 segundos más. Todavía nos faltan como 9 personas, 8 personas.
I know some of you are driving. I know that
Sí,
you
algunos
can't.
están conduciendo, eso no pueden participar.
Don't try to answer this
No.
while you're driving.
Sí, pero
All right, so we're
Bien.
going to end the poll at minute 3. All right,
Bueno,
and we're going to
vamos a
share the
compartir los
results.
resultados. Y vamos a ver. Bueno, ya usted ve que la misión de.
Can you
Que
see
usted
the?
puede ver los resultados, por favor haga así, si lo puede ver.
Okay, perfect.
Ok, bien. Mire, la misión del encuentro,
The mission of the
y
gathering
la mayoría
is,
de la gente, 95% supo,
and 95% responded,
restaurando vidas, familias en nuestra ciudad y nuestro mundo.
that it is restoring lives, families, our city, and our world.
Mucha gente quizás pensó
A few
haciendo
of
todas las
you,
cosas nuevas,
did think that our mission and our vision is making all things new.
pero ese es el refrán, el slogan.
That is the slogan of the church.
Pero la misión,
But the mission and the vision,
que dicho sea de paso, aparece en la pantalla todos los domingos antes del servicio.
and it shows up on the big screens at every Sunday before the service,
Restaurando vidas, familias, nuestra ciudad y nuestro mundo.
restoring lives, families, our city, and our world.
Entonces, esa es la misión de nuestra casa.
That is the mission, vision of the house.
Usted como líder debe ser portavoz
And you,
y
as the
campeón
leader,
de dicha visión.
you should be a champion that through God we restore lives, families, our city, and our world.
Número 2.
And number 2,
Nuestros valores céntricos son.
our core values, right? Some of our core values are here,
Están aquí.
right?
Bueno, interesante.
It's interesting how this was almost
Casi
30%.
30%, pero es el segundo.
It is the second one. We are
Somos centrados en
gospel-centered,
el evangelio,
multi-ethnic,
multiétnico, integrales,
holistic,
basados en pequeños grupos
small group based, and
y-
church
y-
planting and
y
missional.
misional. Era el segundo. Esos son los 5 pilares y
Those are the
enfoques
5 core values, the
que,
5
que encarnan nuestros propósitos.
pillars that incarnate who we are.
Si usted fue a la clase de nuevos miembros,
If you had gone to the class of new members,
eso es parte de la presentación de nuevos miembros.
that is part of the presentation of new membership. And
Y,
again,
y estamos repasando con ustedes
and as we can see, this is something that we need to emphasize and remind and share and
y es
continuously
importante
herald.
porque Cada vez que se una nueva gente, hay que integrarlos a la cultura y a la misión de la casa.
Because every time new people join, right, they need to be aware and abreast. So when people join your teams, they need to know what our values are, what our mission and vision is.
Bueno, y el último, nuestro estilo de liderazgo incluye, pero no está limitado a,
Right. And the third, our leadership style involves, and this is important for all of us here to know, it includes, it's not an exhaustive list, right?
delegar, entrenar
Is to delegate, coach,
y cultivar el
foster
rendir de cuentas.
accountability, right? That is our style. We empower people.
Sí.
We let other people shine. We coach other people. We just don't give them a job and
So,
let them fall.
La idea es
The idea
capacitar
is
y entrenar y empoderar
to capacitate and train and empower
para que la gente pueda servir a la mejor de su probabilidad.
so that you can serve in your best capacity.
Así que muchas gracias por participar
So thank you for participating. I
en
hope
esta
that was,
encuesta. Ojalá y sea un buen recordatorio y un buen ejercicio.
I hope it was a good exercise and a
¿Cómo
reminder.
hicieron? ¿Cómo hicieron? ¿Estamos bien? ¿Estamos?
We're
Todo el mundo sacó 100. Está bien.
Everybody got
Aunque
100.
no sacó 100, tiene 100 ahora. Bueno, mire, queremos enfocarnos
We want to focus on
esta primera parte,
this first part,
unos minutos,
a few moments,
sobre la cultura que edifica gente.
on a culture that builds people up, that builds them.
¿Ok? Si usted está tomando notas,
And if you're a volunteer at the church, we highly encourage that you jot down some notes.
estamos hablando de la cultura
We are talking about culture
que ayuda a la gente a desarrollarse, ¿no?
that helps people develop, that you can
No,
help people in
Una
teams,
cultura que edifica gente.
that builds people.
No estamos hablando de una cultura que edifica programas.
We are not talking about a culture that builds your ministry, your program, the
No,
programs you lead.
no estamos hablando de una cultura
Yes, we are not talking about a
que
culture
edifica eventos.
that builds events.
Hay eventos, hay
There are
programas, hay
events, there are
ministerios.
programs, there are ministries.
Pero quiero que escuchen nuestro corazón muy de cerca porque esto es
But
importantísimo.
we want you to really hear our pastoral heart deep, what's deep inside of our heart, because this is important to who we are as a congregation.
Una cultura
A culture
que edifica
that
gente.
builds people first and foremost.
Hay programas,
Yes, we do have programs.
hay eventos,
We have events.
hay
We
un
have
sinnúmero
ministries.
de ministerios.
We have processes and plans.
Todo eso
All of that
es secundario
is secondary
a una cultura
to a culture
que edifica gente.
that builds people.
La gente es más importante que un programa.
People are more important than a program.
La gente son más importante que eventos.
People are more important than the events that you will launch.
La gente son más importante que cualquier otra cosa que podamos invertir en ellas, aunque sean importantes.
People are more important. Anything that we may do, although what we are doing is also important.
¿Y por qué lo digo así?
And why do I say it like that?
Porque es fácil para cualquiera de nosotros
Because it's easy, right? It really
Que-
is easy
well,
for some of us sometimes
que estemos involucrados en el corre-corre, el ajetreo, la premura de hacer cosas.
that we get so entrenched in the work and the day-to-day and the processes and in a lot of to-dos
Que se nos olvida que la cultura del encuentro
that we forget that the culture of the gathering
tiene como prioridad
has a priority
edificar gente.
to build people.
Y por eso estamos subrayando esto, una cultura que edifica gente.
A culture that builds people.
Si usted puede ver la pantalla nuestra, y yo sé que lo estamos compartiendo, yo estoy tomando algunos de estos principios.
Some of these principles are coming from a book
De un
we're
libro que
constantly reading,
Yo estoy leyendo por segunda vez
reading for a second
de
time.
Michael Fletcher.
It's called Empowering
Se
Leadership
llama Empoderando Liderazgo.
from Michael Fletcher.
El autor se llama Michael Fletcher y
Fletcher.
lo vamos a poner después en
We'll
el
put it-
chat.
We'll put it in the chat.
Michael Fletcher,
Michael Fletcher,
un autor
an author,
cristiano.
Christian.
Es importante que usted, si puede, consiga el libro.
And it's very important if you can
Solo
find the
pon-
book.
le ponemos el nombre y el título al libro y ellos.
We'll put the name over here.
Michael Fletcher, Empowering Leadership.
Empowering Leadership, if somebody can post it for us.
Fletcher, Fletcher.
That
Alguien
would
nos
be
puede
great.
ayudar con poner ese título en el chat.
Mhm.
¿Ok? Mire, es importante
And it is very important
que mientras viajemos con esto,
that as we travel through this,
abracemos no solo las prácticas
we embrace not just the practices
que voy a subrayar,
that I'm going to underscore,
sino los principios y los valores
but the principles and the values
que esta filosofía
that this
subraya.
culture highlights.
Ok, bueno, tomando nota. Punto número 1.
Ready? And if someone of you can be some note takers on the chat, that would be
Punto
great.
número 1.
Point number 1,
Bajo el tema creando una cultura que edifica gente.
under the theme, creating a culture that builds people.
Punto número 1 bajo el tema creando una cultura que edifica gente.
Point number 1, creating a culture that builds people.
Punto número 1 bajo el tema creando una cultura que edifica gente.
Point number 1, under the theme, creating a culture that builds people.
Crear un ambiente
Creating an atmosphere
donde la gente de Dios descubre
where people discover
y madura en su llamado.
and matures in their calling.
La iglesia
The church
crea un ambiente
we're here to create an atmosphere
donde el pueblo de Dios o la gente de Dios
where the people of God
descubre su llamado
discover their call
y madura en su llamado.
and matures in their call.
Déjame pasar unos segundos en este punto.
And I'll spend some time on this point.
¿Qué es un ambiente donde la gente de Dios descubre y madura en su llamado?
What is an atmosphere that in which people discover and mature in their calling?
Quiere decir que hay que haber espacio
It means that there should be room, thank you, Jennifer,
para que la gente
so that people
trate cosas,
try things,
intente cosas.
attempt new things.
Con frecuencia le decimos a la gente alto riesgo, baja ansiedad.
Have you heard us say high risk, low anxiety?
Nosotros tomamos riesgos,
We take risks.
nos aventuramos en la fe,
At TGP, we take a lot of risks. We adventure out.
pero no abrazamos la ansiedad si no lo
But
hacemos en fe.
We try not to embrace anxiety. We try to eliminate anxiety and try to launch in faith.
Y la gente en ese tipo de ambiente o cultura
And people in that type of culture, in that type of ethos or
pueden
atmosphere
descubrir y madurar en su llamado.
can perhaps discover what their callings are, fine-tune their callings, and mature in their callings.
La iglesia es el espacio para crear esa atmósfera.
The church is that space to create the atmosphere.
Cualquier ministerio,
Any one of your ministries,
cualquier espacio de voluntarismo,
any space of volunteerism,
cualquier espacio de servir o
Any-
liderar,
any role that serves, leads, or whatever it does,
es una oportunidad para descubrir y madurar en nuestro llamado.
it is a moment to discover our calling and mature in that work.
Hay un desafío en esto.
And there are some challenges in
Y
this,
yo
right?
quiero que usted escuche nuestro corazón porque esto no es, a veces la parte más difícil de esto es esto.
And if you can listen to our hearts, sometimes the most difficult part of this first step is this.
Hay gente que piensa que tiene un llamado en una área,
There are people that think that have a calling in an area,
pero cuando la gente los observa
but when
o
people
participa
participates of their
de
talent,
su talento, nota que no es su llamado o su área fuerte.
they notice that that person's gifting is not what they're actually working in ministry.
Lo más difícil es
The most difficult thing is
que a veces la última persona en reconocer que ese no es mi ministerio soy yo.
the last person to recognize that I may not be as suitable for that ministry is me myself.
Te voy a dar un ejemplo, les doy un
I'll
ejemplo.
give you an example.
Yo tengo 49 años
He's 49 years
y
old,
todavía estoy luchando que yo no soy un cantante extraordinario.
And he
Yo
still
resisto,
wrestles.
yo todavía resisto.
He wrestles with the fact that he is not an amazing singer.
Pero la verdad es
But the truth
es
is,
que yo canto como cualquier otra persona, pero no soy un líder de adoración, un cantante.
I'm not, the truth is that I'm not a singer. I'm
Pero-
I'm not a worship leader.
Cuando tú eres un líder
But when you are a leader
y tú estás desarrollando gente
and you're developing people
y alguien cree que puede cantar
and someone really believes that they can
y en
sing,
su propia opinión cree que puede cantar
and in their own opinion, they're convinced that they can sing,
o en su propia opinión piensan que pueden predicar
or in their own mind or in their own sentiment, they know how to preach or
o
teach,
piensan que son buenos comunicadores.
or they believe that they are amazing
Y aún
communicators.
después de enseñanza, de formación, de inversión, todavía no lo pueden hacer.
And even after development and formation and training, they still can't do that role.
Es difícil
It is difficult
que la persona llegue a una realización.
for the person to come to a realization,
Wow, ese no es mi llamado.
man, that's not my call.
O ese no es mi destreza.
That is not perhaps my skill. What they
Eso-
usually
lo
respond
es-
is, the people don't want
Sí,
me.
sí. Usualmente la gente dice, que no me querían.
Usually the response of the person is, they don't want me.
No, es que no hay amor, no hay amor.
There's no love in that ministry.
eh,
There's no love in that
Es porque
congregation.
amamos la iglesia que no queremos que tú cantes.
Well, it's because we love the church that perhaps you may not want to sing.
Es porque amamos el pueblo,
It's because we love the people
que queremos ayudar a la gente
that we need to help people.
a descubrir su llamado
Their calling
y su madurez.
and their maturity.
Y eso es cosa de gente madura.
And that takes serious maturity.
So, número uno, la iglesia crea el espacio.
Number one, the church creates an
Porque si
environment,
vas a edificar gente,
because if we're going to build people,
hay que crear espacio
we need to create
para que
space
descubran y maduren en su
for
llamado.
people to discover and mature in their calling,
Y
in
s-
their true
Y
calling.
eso viene,
And that comes
ojo,
No.
eso viene con retroalimentación
with feedback,
genuina y auténtica.
genuine and volunteers. Are you hearing this? Genuine and authentic feedback.
Retroalimentación genuina y auténtica.
Genuine and authentic and loving
Y
feedback.
por supuesto con
Obviously,
amor
loving
y contacto.
and with tact. right?
Número dos.
Ready? Number two. Is
En-
someone writing this down? Jennifer, can
número-
you take care of that?
Número dos,
Number two,
en el tema edificando gente.
under the theme of creating a culture that builds people,
Hay que creer
we need to believe
más de la gente
more for others
que aún ellos mismos creen. por
than
ellos
they
mismos.
believe for themselves.
O sea, nosotros debemos ser los porristas máximos de la gente.
You need to be your team's biggest cheerleaders.
Espíritu de ánimo y aliento.
You are carriers of encouragement and carriers of joy in your teams.
Let's believe more for others.
Vamos a creer más para
Then
otros,
they may even believe for themselves.
que quizás ellos no se creen en ellos mismos.
Sí, hay que creer que Dios tiene propósito en la gente.
We need to believe that God has a purpose for everyone,
Y
for others.
comunicarle eso a la gente.
And communicate it, vocalize it
Yo
to your team members
creo en el potencial de Dios en ti.
and to each other. You know what? I believe God's potential in you.
Nuestra primera palabra no debe ser crítica.
Our first word should never be one of critique to our teams.
La gente crece
People grow
más
more
bajo ánimo que crítica.
under encouragement than critique.
Lo voy a repetir.
I'll repeat it.
La gente crece más bajo aliento y ánimo que crítica.
People grow more with encouragement and joy than with critique. That's not to say that there's not.
Hay lugar para crítica
There is room for constructive
constructiva,
criticism.
pero hay gente que su primer paso, su primer iniciativa, impulso,
But some people, their first impulse, their first response to
Es-
something not
es
done well
corregir
is to correct
y criticar.
and to critique. but not at TGP.
pero no en una iglesia como el encuentro,
But not at the environment we're trying to foster at the gathering,
que es una cultura que edifica gente.
that it is a culture that builds others.
Permíteme decir algo, y esto es entre paréntesis.
Allow me to say this in parenthesis,
Especialmente si usted es una persona con fuertes opiniones.
especially if you are a person that's quite opinionated.
Y quiero que usted ponga en el chat
And I'd love to see in the chat
del 1 al 5.
from, or A through F, it's usually A through F.
Ok,
Yeah.
o A a F.
Mhm.
A siendo fuerte opinión,
A being quite opinionated.
que usted es fuerte de opinión.
You're
Y
you know,
F
you're
es
strong.
que
And
usted es más tímido en compartir su opinión.
you're a bit.
Ok, antes,
Shy.
si hay dos personas, deben de haber dos letras.
If there are
en
two
su-
people in your
en
chat,
chat,
put the two letters.
Si es A, por ejemplo, aquí hay dos A, obviamente, A, A, pero si fueran Samaris, por ejemplo, hay dos personas, pongan dos
The
letras,
Chévere family, you
Los
put two
chéveres.
letters.
porque estamos hablando, acá le voy a dar 30 segundos y nadie le está juzgando, no,
And
no,
this
es,
is not a
no es malo
judgment,
ni bueno,
yeah.
es
It
lo
is.
que es tu
It is.
temperamento, es
It's
tu,
your temperament. It's how you
es
think.
como piensas. If you are an opinionated person and share it often, let's say it that way,
Si eres opinador y lo compartes con frecuencia,
you're an A.
eres una A,
If you
¿verdad?
have a lot of opinions but share it once every 100 times, you're probably an F.
Si tienes muchas opiniones, pero no las compartes con frecuencia,
Then-
entonces quizás es una
If you're
F.
in the middle, you're maybe a C.
Quizás en el
Ok.
medio eres una C.
Vamos a ver esos números.
Oh, people are direct messaging us. Okay, I get it. That's
sí,
fine.
sí. Sí,
That's fine.
ok.
If you don't,
Sí, no lo tienes que hacer, ok.
some people are direct.
Tenemos muchas A,
messaging
gloria a
us.
Dios,
We have a
aleluya.
lot of A's. And
No.
yeah.
Ok,
Uh-huh.
ok, gracias por compartir. Creo que tenemos unas 10, 12.
Someone
9,
put A plus 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 plus.
ok, double A.
Double A.
Ok, tenemos, ok,
C, but sometimes A.
ok, bien.
C, okay.
No, ok. Gracias por compartir.
Thank you for sharing and thank you for your
Y es
transparency.
importante más que nosotros lo veamos, que usted sepa eso de usted mismo.
And it's more than anything, it's for you to know that about yourself,
¿Qué
right?
quiero decir? Si usted es una persona
Why is this important for you to know? Because if you're a person
que tiene opiniones fuertes,
that is opinionated, has strong feelings,
Eh,
and you
y
vocalize them,
acuérdase
remember
que no todo el mundo solicitó su opinión.
that not everyone solicited opinions, right?
No todo lo que yo pienso es para compartirlo.
Not everything that I think is to share it.
¿Sabes? Y una cosa peligrosa para gente que es fuerte de opinión
And something that's very dangerous for people that, right? I'm a linear thinker,
una de
right?
las cosas
One of
pues,
the dangerous
en una
things
cultura que edifica gente.
in a culture where it builds
Porque acuérdate,
people.
todo esto estamos hablando dentro de este contexto.
This is all under the rubrics of creating an environment that builds other people.
Acuérdese que cuando usted está y yo estamos en una iglesia,
Remember, when we are in a church,
tenemos mucha gente con muchas opiniones.
we have a lot of people, and that, right? And especially if you're leading, you
Y
have a lot of
parece- y muchas
opinions
cosas.
coming out you.
Lo que les voy a decir, porque estamos hablando de edificar gente, no siempre comparta una opinión no solicitada.
Be balanced and try not to share all of the opinions that have not been solicited.
Yeah. Unsolicited opinions in great numbers make you undesirable as a leader.
Right. Opiniones constantes como que sobrecargan a los líderes, a un líder, y puede disminuir ¿cómo se dice? The chemistry.
Sí, porque acuérdense, un grupo de 15
If
o
a group of
20
15,
o
20,
100,
or
y
100,
usted es un líder
and you're a
que
leader,
cada vez le está diciendo esto está mal, esto está mal, esto
it's
está mal.
kind of saying, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong.
O inverso, yo tengo una mejor idea, yo tengo una mejor
I
idea.
have a better idea, I have a better idea, I have a better idea, I have a better
La
idea.
impresión es que uno sale como un todo.
The impression is that you become kind of like a know-it-all.
Aunque no sea su intención, aunque la
Although
intención
it
es
may not
ayudar
be
el equipo.
your intention, you're very well intentioned to help the team.
Acuérdese
Remember,
que si usted va a edificar gente,
if you're gonna build others,
hay que crear espacio para que ellos piensen por ellos mismos.
you need to give a certain amount of space for them to opinionate themselves and for them to fail or be victorious.
Y usted le da retroalimentación.
You give them feedback and you coach them. Is that helpful?
Eso les ayuda.
Does that make
¿Está
sense?
claro lo que estoy comunicando? ¿Alguien necesita mayor claridad o
I think
quiere
that's
hacer una pregunta referente?
Mhm.
Okay, good. Unsolicited opinion can make you undesirable as a leader,
Mhm.
right? Not that you, it's
No
the
es-
frequency of it.
No
It's
es que
the-
es no deseable, es que no todas personas pueden cargar opiniones
Sí.
tantas veces.
Especialmente si usted o yo soy la persona siempre dándola,
Especially if I'm the person always giving it, always giving it, always giving it, right?
Oca, número 3.
3,
Y esto es para, hay una pregunta,
I think there's a question.
vi una mano, Rafi, sí.
Yes.
¿Por
Pastor
qué no
Rafi.
hacemos algo? Si la puedes poner en
If you can put it in
en
the
el
chat,
después
Rafi.
de este punto la levantamos, o no, Rafi no puede ponerlo en el chat.
No.
Sí, ok, hazla, sí.
Go ahead, Rafi.
Rapidito, pastor, no sé si se oye esto.
Sí, se oye.
Yes.
Las opiniones especialmente hacia los líderes que están para servir en el altar, pastor y otros líderes de adoración, etcétera. En el momento en que van a servir, no es el mejor momento tampoco para ofrecérselas, aunque sea la mejor opinión. Es mejor
Excellent.
esperar luego de eso.
Yes.
Sí,
So
excelente, sí.
it's excellent. And leaders, so what he said is the timing of opinions is very important too, right? For example, he made a comment. If the altar working is in
Right.
the middle of his or her job,
Singing,
right?
dancing,
Dancing,
preaching, teaching.
that is perhaps not the best moment to make an opinion or a correction of some sort. Leaders have to create space
Right.
where everyone can dialogue and opinionate together.
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
I would also say after the service is not probably the optimal time
Y
either.
después del servicio tampoco quizás
Because
no
people
es
are greeting,
optimal,
meeting
¿verdad?
new people, right? So
Which is why we encourage you to meet with your teams on a monthly
Right, right.
basis.
El tiempo de sugerencia durante la hora de servicio no va a generar la mejor producción.
The space, the time of opinions during the actual service can cause a little bit of chaos, right?
Yeah, because people are actually working, meeting new people, greeting babies, putting babies away. So, you know, cleaning the room, the back. Es bien como el mejor tiempo para sugerirle a alguien no es cuando está en pleno empleo de su ministerio o trabajo.
The best time is not when someone is in their full volunteerism position.
Ojo, no te estoy hablando si hay una emergencia. Ay, alguien,
Right? I'm not talking about when there's an
peligro,
emergency or a
un
danger
fuego,
or a
un
fire
niño.
or a
Te estoy hablando
child.
algo común y corriente. Veo otra mano.
I see another hand.
Andy.
This is very good. And Andy, I don't see Andy. Oh,
Yeah, God bless you guys.
God
In
bless
regards
you.
to talking about opinions, opinion doesn't make it right. I think as leaders, we have to remember that I may have an opinion on what's the best way to do something. It doesn't mean it's the only right way to do something.
excellent. That's
So
beautiful.
a lot of times when I'm talking to my other leaders or my volunteers, I will express my opinion and I will state why I express my opinion.
Yes,
But
the
I'm never
why.
discouraged to try new things because a lot of times it may just work for someone. We all have different ways that we work, different styles. What works for me may not work for you and vice versa. Ultimately, it's the end game that matters. Did we accomplish our goal? And there's lots of ways of doing that. I think a lot of times as leaders, we focus on what worked for me because it got me to where I was or it was successful at one point. But that doesn't mean that that's the only way. We have to kind of swallow our pride at times and understand there's lots of different ways of doing things.
Preciso.
That's very
preciso.
good.
No,
Very
y
precise.
mira, y es importante lo que dice
And it's
Andy.
very important what Andy says, right?
Hay muchas formas de lograr la misma cosa.
There are many ways to accomplish the same
Dice el
thing.
refrán anglo, there's many
Very
ways
good.
to skin a cat.
Many ways to skin a cat.
O sea, y hay que respetar las diferencias.
And respect the different
Dice,
ways of people doing
y
things.
como dice
Right?
la hermana Janice,
And Janice puts a very important point.
nunca para avergonzar
Never, ever, ever in public.
y nunca en público.
Never, ever, ever to shame,
Hay que
because
re-
that
Eso,
does not build
eso no
people.
edifica a la gente, avergonzar a la gente no edifica a la gente. O sea,
That shames people.
sí, no debemos poner la gente en una situación precaria donde
Right.
su dignidad es retada.
We can never, ever challenge people's dignity in public, or even talk to someone
Sí,
else
sí.
discrediting the
Sí,
dignity
sí,
of
sí, sí,
someone
sí,
else, right?
Porque edificar gente
Man, to build other people, believe me, it's not an
no
easy
es tan
job.
fácil,
It's
pero,
not easy.
pero derrumbar gente es bien fácil.
But to destroy and start chipping away at people is very easy.
Una palabra puede hacer mucho daño.
One word can destroy an entire
Y
team.
nadie es perfecto en eso, estamos aprendiendo,
And
pero,
that's perfect,
pero
right?
vamos a por lo menos crear una cultura que edifica gente.
But we can create a culture that builds
Ok,
people.
número 3, y esta es importante para
Number
mí,
3,
yo la estoy aprendiendo ahora.
I'm learning, we're learning as we grow, right?
Edifica la mayoría de los líderes
Build the majority of our leaders
desde adentro.
within the house.
No todos los líderes vienen de adentro.
Not all of the leaders come
Uno
in-house.
recluta gente,
Sometimes we recruit leaders,
pero la mayoría de los líderes deben de incubarse en casa.
but most of the leaders should be incubated in the house.
¿Por qué?
Why?
Porque después cargan el ADN de la casa, la cultura de la casa,
Because they know
la filosofía.
the philosophy,
Ahora,
right?
esto, por supuesto, es complejo cuando tú eres una iglesia nueva,
And obviously this is complex
plantando una iglesia.
when you're a new church, because
Porque
everybody's
todo el mundo
new.
es nuevo.
We're all new.
Todo el mundo es nuevo. Pero todo el mundo está creciendo con el ADN de la casa.
But we're all learning with the DNA together,
Si uno está haciendo su trabajo de comunicarlo.
right? But when you have church
Sí, pero
transfers,
cuando uno tiene transferencia,
when you have church transfers, right?
ellos traen su propia cultura
They bring their own culture.
y no hay nada malo en eso. Cada uno se incubó en una cultura eclesiástica, no hay nada malo en eso.
Well, everyone was incubated in a different ecclesiastical culture,
El
right?
problema es cuando tratas de imponer una cultura de afuera en la cultura donde tú estás entrando.
The challenge is to try and maybe unintentionally or sometimes intentionally bring in the culture from your prior place into the new place.
Y no quiere decir que esa cultura era mala.
It doesn't mean that culture was bad.
Es que cada organización y congregación tiene su cultura.
It's that every congregation has their own culture.
Y uno tiene que tratar de entender y visualizar.
And we have to try to understand and visualize
Porque ¿qué es la cultura de este lugar?
that action. What was that culture? And what was this what is this
Y lo que
culture?
yo traigo se integra con salud, es factible o es violento a la cultura.
Is what I'm doing right now violent to the culture that we're trying to create? Or is it viable, or does it foster the culture
Sí,
that
o
we're trying to
añade
create?
valor o hace daño.
Does it add value, or does it take away from the culture, right? Those are questions that as leaders, we are always asking.
Y yo siempre me hago esa pregunta
And we try to always internally ask ourselves that question.
porque todo el mundo tiene su idea y su costumbre,
Because everyone, we come with different customs.
pero el desafío es cómo, si yo soy líder de un ministerio, líder de algo, cómo yo puedo asegurarnos que todos estemos remando en la misma dirección.
But if for those of us who are leaders here, how do we make sure that everyone is following the culture and understands the culture and can implement the culture when they come from other different cultures, right?
Ujú. Sin despreciar otras culturas.
Without despising or minimizing them,
Lo
right?
que
How do
estamos
we do
diciendo
that?
es, eso estaba bien allá, pero aquí por X o Y razón lo hacemos así.
Well, thank you. I think that's a beautiful way to do it, but in this culture, this is how we're approaching it. Okay.
4,
Number 4,
si queremos edificar gente,
if we want to build people,
valoramos carácter
we value character
sobre
over anointing
unción y talento.
and gifting. And this is very,
Esto es bien
very,
importante.
very important.
Valoramos carácter o integridad
We value character. We value integrity
sobre las unciones y los talentos de la gente.
and honesty and transparency over the anointing and the giftings of people.
Hay gente que son muy talentosas,
There are people, friends that we all know that are very, very
muy
talented,
diestro en ciertas funciones.
very gifted in their craft.
Y tienen, ¿sabes? Unción que hacen que los ángeles canten.
They can make angels sing and dance.
Pero el carácter está en un déficit.
But character is in a deficit,
Yo-
and even how they behave and
Cómo se
project
comportan
themselves
con la gente,
with
cómo
people,
hablan,
how they speak, their facial gestures,
su
their
vida de oración,
prayer life, their
su enseñabilidad,
Their-
¿no?
teachability, their
Todo eso
all of that, right?
es importante.
It is
Porque cuando
important
estamos edificando gente,
because when we are building people,
no celebramos su talento más que su carácter.
we can't celebrate their talent more than their
Porque
character.
queremos que esa gente crezca y madure.
Because we want those people to grow and mature.
Y si excusamos mal comportamiento porque alguien es hábil,
And if we excuse bad behavior because someone is very gifted,
estamos destruyendo una cultura salubre y saludable.
we are then destroying at the fibers of a healthy culture that we're trying to continue to cultivate.
Lo voy a repetir porque esto es un punto
I'll repeat it because
importante en desarrollar gente.
this is a very important point for us in developing others.
Si excusamos
If
mal
we
comportamiento
Excuse bad
o
behavior
irresponsabilidad
or irresponsibility
porque alguien es hábil o diestro,
because someone is very gifted,
estamos destruyendo
we can destroy
una cultura saludable y salubre.
a healthy and wise culture.
Entonces, por eso, si vamos a edificar gente,
That is why if we're going to build people,
no ministerios,
not ministries,
no eventos,
not events,
eso vendrá
that comes
como,
after building
como
people
implicación de gente saludable.
as
Como,
an implication of
como
healthy people.
producto, gente saludable produce cosas saludables.
Healthy people produce healthy products.
Jesús lo dijo así,
Jesus said it like this.
un árbol bueno da buen fruto.
A good, healthy tree gives good fruit.
Mire, en este libro que
In
estoy
this
leyendo,
book
es
that
que
I'm reading,
me bendice tanto.
It blesses me so much.
Dice que el edificar gente
It says that to build people,
es un proceso lento, rápido.
it is a slow, fast process.
Cuando yo leí esa frase,
When I read that
imagínate,
phrase, slow, fast,
lo voy a repetir varias veces a ver cómo usted lo oye, ¿no?
I'm going to repeat it to see how you hear it.
Edificar gente
To build people
es un proceso lento, rápido.
is a slow, fast process.
Edificar gente
And that's what the book says. It says to build people
es un proceso
is a slow, fast
lento, rápido.
process.
Seguí leyendo porque la verdad que yo dije, wow, esto
The
está
truth
súper
is
interesante.
That when we read that quote, you know, it was what attracted us to the book, right?
Lo que dice el autor, y yo creo que estoy de acuerdo,
What the author says, and I believe that I am in
se lo
agreement.
someto a ustedes para su aceptación o rechazo.
I submit it for your acceptance or rejection.
Es que edificar gente
Is that to build people,
toma mucho tiempo,
it takes a long
pero
time.
una vez estén edificando
But once they start
en
building
una forma madura, una vez ellos estén madurados,
in a mature way,
edificar gente toma tiempo,
to build people takes
pero una
time.
vez ellos han madurado,
But once they've matured,
ellos corren
they're
y
catapults.
son catalíticos.
They are catalytic
Por eso los primeros 2 y 3 años
That is why the first 2-3 years,
estamos en cultura, cultura. La gente otra vez,
we're
pastor,
not,
los pastores salieron otra vez, cultura,
some
otra
of you may
vez.
say, oh my God, this leadership investment
Otra
again.
vez, otro mes de 1 hora de mi tiempo.
We're not going to let it go. Believe me, we're not.
El ADN es todo.
DNA of a congregation is everything.
La gestación de un proyecto es todo.
The gestation process of a big project is
Por eso,
everything.
si el niño tiene un problema en su gestación
That is why if a child has an issue in the gestation
de
process,
40 semanas, 9 meses, 10 meses, lo
right,
que
9
sea,
months, 10 months, however,
puede tener problemas cuando es adolescente de respiración, de asma,
they can have later
de-
than
de-
lung problems
de
or,
estatura.
or height
Y la gente dice, pero ¿de
problems.
dónde vino eso?
But where did that come from?
En la temporada de gestación.
Something happened in the gestation process, or
Sí,
or
o algo en el ambiente afectó su
something
desarrollo.
in the atmosphere changed
Sí.
it. So
O,
leadership has to be all the time.
Contaminación ambiental, air pollution, algo. Entonces, yo quiero ser claro con esto,
I want to be very clear with
porque
this.
hay que decirle a la gente por qué uno hace cosas.
We need to share with you why we take time
¿Por qué-
in doing this.
¿Por qué tomamos 1 hora cada varios meses para hacer esto?
Every 2-3 months, we take time to get this done
Porque las personas y los líderes que no cuidan la cultura
because people, and we've seen churches go downward. We've
se,
seen it.
sufren de algo que se llama mission drift, se desalinean de la misión.
We've seen hundreds of churches that fall into mission drift.
Y tenemos que usted y yo, ustedes y nosotros,
And you and I, every one of you who are Zoom,
todos nosotros, usted y nosotros,
all of us, you and I,
tenemos que ser cuidadosos con eso.
we need to care and foster and make the culture flourish
Y
all
por
the
eso
time.
valoramos carácter sobre destrezas y unciones.
And that is why we value character over giftings.
Aunque respetamos talentos y unciones.
Although we respect, obviously,
Pero cada
anointings
cosa
and
en su
giftings,
lugar. Cada
but
cosa en su-
everything in its place.
Quinto,
And fifth and last,
no edifique gente
don't build people
para edificar la casa.
to build the house.
Edifica a la gente
Build people
porque usted lo ama.
because you love people.
Ellos edificarán la casa.
They, as a byproduct, will build the house.
No use la gente, no usemos la gente
We cannot use people
como un vehículo para alcanzar nuestros sueños y logros.
as a vehicle to accomplish our dreams and our goals.
¿Sabes? Uno edifica a la gente porque uno ama a la
We
gente.
build people because we love them and we want to see them grow in what God has for them.
Suena súper fácil,
Man, that sounds like an easy one, right?
pero mucha gente dice, voy a invertir en ella o él
But many people say, man, you know what? I'm going to build in that person.
porque yo sé que ellos van a producir mucho por la casa.
I know
para la
they're gonna make the ministry look good and they're gonna produce for the house,
Y,
right?
wow, y ellos nos van a hacer bien, ver bien.
And they're gonna make us look good.
En realidad, el fin no es la persona,
In reality, the end is not the
es el
person,
proyecto
It
o la
becomes-
casa.
the event. It becomes the house or your goal or your celebration
Hermanos y
or your
hermanas,
ministry, beloved brethren.
eso es sutil.
That is very subtle and it can
Eso se
seep.
cuela en nuestros corazones sutilmente.
That can seep into our hearts very subtly.
Wow, mira este o esta, qué talentoso es.
Wow. And that's not to say that we're not going to use specific talented people.
Pero el propósito es para que ellos maduren y crezcan como Cristo.
But the purpose is to be people-centered so that they grow and mature like Christ because we simply love them.
Simplemente porque los amamos.
We love them.
Y si después de crecer Dios los llama a otra iglesia,
And if after growing, God calls them to another church,
los bendecimos
we bless
porque
them
los amamos a ellos.
because we love people,
No solo lo que ellos pueden hacer para la casa.
not just what they can do for the house.
Este quinto punto
And this fifth point, we've seen
lo
churches
hemos visto.
fall on this.
No edifique la gente
Do not build people
para que ellos edifiquen la
to
casa.
build the house.
Edifique la gente
Build people
porque usted los ama.
because we love them. You love them.
ellos edificarán la casa.
they're gonna build a house
Orgánicamente.
organically
Porque
out
gente
of love.
saludable y amada orgánicamente produce.
Loved, healthy people automatically produce
Sin manipulación.
without
sin-
manipulation, without
sin-
distortion,
sin-
without
sin-
bargaining,
sin-
without
sin negociación, sin
begging,
maltrato,
without
sin insulto,
without
todas las
insults,
cosas enfermizas que dañan
all
una
those
cultura.
practices that are sickly and can harm a culture.
Estos 5 puntos
These 5 points
son parte de un proyecto que nos ayuda a ser líderes con corazón de siervos y siervas.
can help us be servant leaders with loving hearts.
Bien,
Very
mi
good.
tiempo se ha terminado. Tenemos tiempo para preguntas y
We
respuestas.
have a few minutes and we're going to stop the
Y vamos a
recording.
parar
here.
la grabación.
Going to stop recording